I actually did a map this week. I screenshotted a map, and I asked those guys to put it up on the screen for you so you can see where all this starts. So John writes this book from the Isle of Patmos, and then it's taken to Ephesus, and then to Smyrna, and then to Pergamos. And so I want you to see this map. We're going to put it on the screen so you can see it. So you'll see John was on the Isle of Patmos, which was on your far left there, and then it moves up. And these would be, what you see on the lines are the trade routes. These would have been the routes that people would have traveled in that day. And so you would have moved from Patmos across the trade route to Ephesus, and then from Ephesus you would have moved up to Smyrna, and then from Smyrna up to Pergamos. Notice that Smyrna, which we're going to talk about today, is in a port. It's actually a port town. And then to Pergamos, and then to Thyatira, and then to Sardis, and then to Philadelphia, and finally to Laodicea. So just leave the map up there for a moment. I want you to think about this for a second. Do you notice something there? Think about this. Revelation chapter 1 tells us, verse 1 and 2, said that these things are, and I used the New King James last week, these things are signified, or they are signified. So why did he choose these churches? And is there a pattern that he's trying to show us by showing us these churches? And so here's what I believe. This is my firm belief, that each of these churches represents not only a church that was in existence at that day and time, but was also significant for things that would be happening during the different church ages. So today I want to talk to you about the church at Smyrna. And so what is the significance that we find at the church of Smyrna? What was the town of Smyrna like at the time? And so again, it was a port town. It was actually the major trade route from Pergamos was the major trade route to Asia at the time. And so a wide range of people and a wide range of cultures would have come through Smyrna. And so what's some things that we know about Smyrna? What's the things he's telling us? Well, the word Smyrna is very interesting. But Smyrna is really, above all the other churches, it really stands out to me. Because Smyrna, the word Smyrna actually means myrrh. Now, to help you with that, you may remember when Jesus was born, they brought gifts to him. The wise men brought gifts to him. And of the three gifts, myrrh was one of them. Remember, they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Why is myrrh significant? Okay, why did they bring myrrh to baby Jesus, to Joseph and Mary? Myrrh is a gift that you give to someone who's going to die. It's an ointment that you put as a burial upon someone. It's really interesting to me to think about this. The wise men were actually saying, and it really shows how wise they were, that he would live, but he would also die. Well, Jesus goes on and he presents himself in a certain way that I think is unique to all the other seven churches. He says to them, Jesus says, I'm the first and the last who was dead and has come to life. And what he's presenting himself as, I am the Lord of the extremes. In Matthew 28, verse 18, he said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Okay, listen to me. He's the Lord of the extremes. He goes on to say, not only do I know your tribulation, he says, I know your poverty. And he says an interesting statement. He says, but you are rich. I don't think anyone really fully knows why he says, I know your poverty, but you are rich. Some people have said, as you read commentaries, someone says, well, there were people in that church who were very wealthy. And it's very possible there were people who were wealthy in that church. It was certainly a center of trade in that town, and they certainly could have had the potential of making a lot of money in Smyrna at that time. But it's also possible that because they did not say Caesar is Lord, that people refused to buy their goods and their wares and to use their business services in their homes and in their properties. And so therefore, because of that, they were rich at one time and they had lost everything. I kind of tend to think that what it's actually saying is, you're poor right now, but the reality is because you have each other, the church, you're rich. He goes on to say, verse 9, he says, I know the blasphemy. He said, I know your poverty, I know your tribulation, but I know your blasphemy by those who say they are Jews, but they're not. But they're of the synagogue of Satan. And I would like to say it this way, when instead of saying blasphemy, another version of Scripture actually says, I know your slander. And there's 3 things that I notice he tells them about their prison situation. Number 1, he says, it will test you. Here's the second thing he told them. He says, and I think this is an encouraging word. He says it'll be only for a limited time. And then the last thing he says, be faithful until death. Be faithful until death. And he concludes that with, and if you're faithful, I'll give you the crown of life. Hey, I got good news for you. Listen, we're all going to face death. Some of us are going to face hard times, difficult times and hardships and tribulations. But I'm convinced it will not separate you from the love of Jesus Christ.